Hey everyone, thank you for listening to another episode of Spoiler Force Podcast. You can find more episodes on any podcasting platform such as Apple Podcast, Spotify, Amazon, SoundCloud, and YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe and make sure to follow Spoiler Force Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Twitch. So my name is Ricky. This is Spoiler Force Podcast. I'm with the great Rob Olson, and it's an honor to meet him.
Well, I don't know about that. Fortunately for all of you out there and me, Ricky has lowered his standards with respect to voice actors. But from Yakko, I just want to tell you guys you are listening and watching the Spoiler Force Podcast. See you in the water tower. Good night, everybody!
This is a FlowGasm Beats production.
All right, so this is episode 98 of Spoiler Force Podcast. My name is Ricky, and thank you for tuning in. This week's guest, I have returning guest and podcast host of What's in My Head podcast, Julian Hester. This is part 2 of the second collaboration of the Spoiler Force and What's in My Head podcast collab. So don't get that confused. We did have a first collaboration, which is episode 80 of Spoiler Force Podcast, and then you can find part 2 of that on Julian's podcast, and then the part 1 of part 2 of our collaboration, the first episodes on Julian's podcast, which you can find on YouTube. And then this is the second part of the second collaboration. So thank you, Julian, for doing this, man. Speaking with you on the podcast makes me like happy because I get to talk to another podcaster. And it's not like I'm conducting an interview or like speaking with someone whose work I'm like trying to, I guess you could say, glorify. So like a lot of us podcasters, we have like something we can relate to, like a common ground that we can talk about. And speaking of that too, like something that we left off of was the My Hero Academia season 5. You missed out on that first. Again, if you missed out on the first part, go watch Julian's first part of our second collaboration. And that way you can get the feel of what we're talking about right now. So My Hero Academia season 5, what you were saying before we switched over here, what was my favorite part of season 5. As of right now, I was surprised though with My Hero that they did they did an arc change, because in the manga it's supposed to be the Class A versus Class B, and then the My Villain Academia arc, and then the Shoto family arc. But then they brought that arc in first before the My Villain Academia arc. So that's a little bit different. But in a sense, it does make sense because the whole Shoto family dynamic arc is really short. But I think did you leave off just when they're having dinner? Because I don't want to spoil anything for you.
Yeah, so. I left off when let me real quick. I left off when they were cleaning up, and Bakugo being Bakugo. Of course, sorry if I'm making a bunch of music. Bakugo being Bakugo, but Endeavor being Endeavor. This bad motherfucker, dude. I'm telling you, man. Endeavor. Like, he started out as one of my favorite heroes when I started watching the show. Then it switched to Aizawa as far as pro heroes go. And Bakugo's always been my guy, but it's so hard to pick just 1, 2, or 3. But that is where we left off. Yes, and Endeavor, man, Jesus Christ, he's starting to become like a Bakugo. Those onions, those layers are starting to peel. You're starting to see the real man behind, that number 1 hero.
Okay, so from what I can say up to this point, my favorite part is probably when Bakugo destroyed Class B in their battle, like when he took over and he annihilated Class B.
It was so great. And then you see him like, I will be there for you. And like, I don't want to get teary-eyed, but I feel like it's already starting to come. There's something about when something is done correctly, I guess, when somebody has a point and they've mastered that craft, right? They take what they do and they're at the highest level of whatever it is they're doing, whether it's cooking, whether it's comic books, whether it's movies. When somebody is at the top of their game, they've mastered their craft. And I feel like that's what they're doing here with My Hero. But you get that character and he's like, listen, I will protect you to the fullest extent of my abilities. But if I fail, you better be there and you better pull my ass out of the fire. No pun intended. When you see that happen, when he's fighting 1A and 1B, dude, I was on my feet the entire episode. Dude. It was so like I never thought I'd be this invested into anything. But for some reason, this show, I don't know what it is about this show. I got to say it's the character-driven story. But that scene when he pushes them out of the way and he just takes over, fuck, dude, was it so good?
Yeah, what made it so good too is like people forget that Bakugo is very attentive to his classmates too. Like he knows Sero's tape quirk, he knows Jiro's hearing quirk, and even Sato, the guy who eats candy to get stronger.
Yeah.
Like he put all that into play. Like and what was really great too was that his classmates knew what Bakugo was doing. Like none of them questioned what his plans were. They all just flowed together. Like for you work in a kitchen, like you and your staff members, like you guys just all flow together. You guys get all your appetizers out, get the main courses out. Everyone knows their job. And so that's exactly what they did. They did all their jobs, and Bakugo, of course, he carried the team. But the way how they've been showing Class B throughout that arc was, Class B had some killers in their team, and Bakugo showed them like what was up. Like Bakugo showed them like I'm going to be number one for a reason, and he took them all out.
He dropped the mic in the most droppable mic scenario of all time, dude. When he was sitting there, and then you just see like it was like he was 4 steps ahead of everybody. And what's crazy is you come off of that, and then they end season 4 where they end season 4 with Endeavor raising his fist, becoming the number 1, and then you don't see so much of like how far they've grown. Then you get to 1A versus 1B, and you start to see like, oh, everybody's making leaps and bounds. But it was never defined as like as far as Bakugo has come. Like he comes out, and then you're like, all right, he's probably gained a little bit. And you're like, holy shit, when did he start? When did he make this flip? Like there's a switch you've got to hit in any kind of profession, right? And then he hit that switch, and he didn't let that motherfucker rest at all. He just went balls to the wall 100% right out the gate. And you're like, wow, there's more layers to this character than I thought there was previously going to be. So like I said, man, it's so good. So good.
Were there any Class B members that drew your interest at all? Because like I said, Class B had some killers in their team.
The dude, and I don't remember all of their names, but the dude in the shadows that was fighting Tokoyami and all of them, that dude was dope as shit. I look at him, I'm like, man, this guy's gonna be a villain. Shinso, man, I was so happy.
Yes.
Him, and then Aizawa took an interest in him. I'm like, fuck, dude. Like they preluded it to it when they were talking when Deku and Shinsu fought, excuse me. In the tournament, they're like, he doesn't have that standard beat 'em up type of power, so he's always at a disadvantage. So we need to change this test. I'm like, holy shit! And then they bring him in, and then he takes him under his wing. But yeah, him, Shinso, of course, and then the mushroom chick.
Oh man, everyone loves her.
It was so dope. But something you brought up just a second ago, I want to switch back to, and it's just a hypothetical. And I can't remember his name right now. The dude Sugar Rush. What's his real name? He eats all the
Sato.
Sato. Do you think down the road he's gonna develop diabetes?
Probably,
Yeah.
unless like he finds a way to eat like eat something
Sugar-free?
the sugar. I don't know. Like I think his body might be different though, because his body turns all that sugar into strength. But I don't know. You brought up a great point though. That's a great loophole right there for his powers, because if he does get diabetes or like even really bad cavities from all the sweets, like he can't fight no more.
Well, you got to think if you're consistently inundating your body with sugar, as you get older, your body can't eat the same stuff you used to be able to eat. As we get older, we start to our body doesn't break down. Let's just use milk as an example. Our bodies become lactose intolerant as we get older. Not as a whole, but most of the time you can't eat the same shit you were able to eat. And milk is one of those ones that stick out because obviously it's not something our body has evolved to take in. Maybe 100,000 years from now, we'll be able to take milk from a different animal and be able to eat dairy a lot better than we are deeper into our 60s or 50s or 60s or 70s. And like I said, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not a scientist. I wear a chef coat to work, not a lab coat. So all of this shit, take it for what it's worth. Take it with a pinch of salt, no pun intended. But I got to imagine, like, if you're consistently getting older and your body's not able to handle the same food or whatever it is as you get older, in comic books, I mean, you could probably just write off, he's like, he'll be able to take sugar evolved. But the first thing I think of is like, he's eating these mountains of cakes and stuff. I was like, man, I wonder if his stomach gets upset. When I eat a lot of sugar, I drink a lot of sugar, my stomach gets upset. And I wonder if he'll ever get diabetes. But nonetheless, man, just an interesting thought, I suppose.
I mean, he could be transitioning into like fruits, because I mean, there's natural sugars in fruits, yes, and stuff like that. But yeah, but if he has to eat like legit like bad sugars, then good luck.
When you started this season, how far in advance in the manga were you?
Let's see. Season 5 started, so I think at the time the manga is pretty far ahead. So
yeah.
If you're friends with me on Facebook, so I don't post up any major spoilers. I always do like panels and stuff like that whenever I share. But let's see where they're at right now, because the sub anime is a little bit ahead too. They're like a couple weeks ahead of the dub anime. So the sub anime right now is they just got into the My Villain Academia arc, and then the English dub. I'm pretty, like you said, you left off at the Shoto family dinner, so they're probably almost done with that arc.
Yeah.
And then the manga. I don't recall when the manga is where I was at with the manga when the anime picked back up, but I'm pretty sure it was just like, I don't want to spoil anything either, because for anyone who's just anime only, they ended off at a huge like, because the anime the manga right now, like, it's back-to-back huge arcs right now.
Yeah.
And what I can say is where they were at, they just finished they were just towards the end of a big arc, going into another big arc. So I think right now, from what I'm reading, I feel like the manga is going to be finished not soon, but they're getting towards that last the last big battle. They're getting towards that, and then probably end it off there. Like I've been watching Harry Potter, so rewatching Harry Potter. So they're at the part where pretty much in terms of manga arc, they're probably close to like the Deathly Hallows part. That's what I can say.
You think they're going to end it with the manga that soon, though?
Depends on the fan base too. I mean, the writer himself, from what I've seen, he's been under a lot of pressure, and just to please the fans. I hope he ends it his way, because like we were saying before, like we were talking about the movie in the first part of this collaboration. Like the Heroes Rising was supposed to be the original ending script for My Hero.
Really?
That was supposed to be the original ending for My Hero, but then I guess from what the changes have been made in this original series, he scrapped it and then turned that into the movie.
So are these movies canon, or is it like Fast and the Furious? You got to go and watch like 3, but 5 comes before 4 and 6 comes before 3. You know what I'm talking? Is it like that, or is this just like, it's like a side mission or a side quest, these movies, or are they actual canon?
I don't think they're actual canon, but there are like parts of the original storyline in it. So like for the first movie, Two Heroes, they had a good plot to it. Like it was they say it's during season 2 and 3, the summer vacation of season 2 and 3, which makes sense. It doesn't have to be exactly in the storyline, but it's like an annual when it comes to comic books. It's not exactly with the storyline, but it's something that's there. And Two Heroes wasn't canon, but there are bits and pieces of like the anime and even the manga. There was parts of the manga that was in there that wasn't even shown yet. Like for example, in the movie you see the doctor that's in there. Yeah. He doesn't even get revealed until later on of season 5, like of the My Villain arc. That was supposed to be like the big reveal, but then they showed it in the movie. So like a lot of people who were watching the movie were pissed. They're like, "What the hell? He's part of the league and whatnot." So like that was a part of it. They teased because that movie aired before the end of season 4. So like they teased Endeavor's prominence burn technique. Like they showed that in the movie, and then they tease him fighting the League, and there's like bits and pieces of everything. And then like even with Deku's Delaware smash, like with his gauntlet, like that wasn't even shown until season 4 where he picked that up, but they showed that in the movie. So like there's bits and pieces of everything. But with this third movie, I have no idea what they're doing, because in Japan they released a side missions manga that came with the movie, similar to Demon Slayer. Like if people who watch the Demon Slayer movie in Japan, they got like an exclusive manga book or chapter, and so My Hero, they did the same thing. They got like an exclusive side mission. It's from what I've seen, it's supposed to kind of blend in with what they're doing now, with like how the Todoroki Shoto and Bakugo and Midoriya are training with Endeavor. It's kind of like that, but like I said, I don't think it's exactly canon. But this third movie, though, I don't know. It looks interesting, but at the same time, I'm like putting it to pretty high standards compared to the second movie. I hope that there's something there that stands out. And after reading the manga too for My Hero, I think they're gonna show some sort of teaser with Deku, because by at this point we all know Deku has more than one quirk. He has the Black Whip quirk, so I think they're gonna tease more of Deku in the movie now versus like him sharing the ability of One for All.
Where you are at now, and not so much in the manga, but in the show. Are they going to explore more of, because you said there was 8, wasn't there? There was 8 people that held on to My Hero that he's going to unlock their quirks, correct?
Yeah, there's, I think, I know there's like 7 quirks, 6 or 7 quirks that he has. Which I mean, I can say that because it's already been revealed in the anime. So I won't say what it is though, but there are multiple quirks that Deku has to unlock.
Do you think they show more than that one this season, or have they showed more than that one this season so far?
For the season, no. I think they'll just. I think for right now it's just Black Whip, but I think the next arc, like season 6, they'll probably show either the end of season 6 or like maybe even season 7. I don't, depending on how they write it or depending on how they display the arcs, because things could switch up. I say between season 6 and 7, that's when you'll see Deku start to reveal more quirks. Because in the manga right now, what I can say is they've shown most of it, but one. There's still one more quirk they haven't shown yet in the manga.
So if you had to guess, how many more seasons do you think we're going to get? If he finishes it up pretty soon like he's going to, how many more seasons do you think we'll get? At least 10 more?
I gotta say, I think in total, I think maybe 10 to 12 seasons total. I think maybe more. But like I said, man, the writer he's always switching it up. Like he could have ended it a lot. I thought like he could have ended it a lot sooner. But I guess, but again, he gets pressure from the fan base too, and not saying the fan base is great, because some of it's pretty bad, but
there's some shitbags out there,
and so he gets a lot of pressure for like carrying out storylines and do like people were getting upset with the whole Endeavor thing. Like there were some fans out there on Twitter were saying like, don't give Endeavor a redemption. Like that's the point of his character. He deserves redemption. That's the point of his character. Like
yes, everybody needs somebody like that. Like I told you, I've told you on the last podcast as well as the last time we collaborated. Every Goku needs a Vegeta. Every Vegeta needs a Goku. Look at character development just as it is solely. Just talking about this show, you see this character one way. He can't be, nobody is 100% bad, nobody is 100% good. There are different quirks, no pun intended, if you will, to each person. Not talking the show in particular, just people in general, real life people. Everybody has their little quirks. Everybody has their little idiosyncrasies, right, that make them who they are, right? Just because this dude was so hard on Shoto, or just because he was so hard on his family, right? There's got to be a reason. He's just not an asshole to be an asshole, right? So you're starting to see why he was pushing Shoto. Then with where Hawks is at, which is a phenomenal character. I'm so glad that they're spending more time on Hawks and you're getting to see, because like I said, I'm not too deep into the manga. I'm trying to keep it on pace with the seasons I'm watching, because I don't want to read it and then be like, oh man, this doesn't hit the way it should hit. I'd much rather see, and it's never been like this. I've always enjoyed the book more or wanted to read a book more than see the movie that it was based off of, because you get more information in the book. However, this thing is so beautifully shot and beautifully done. I want to read it like a companion, essentially, if you will. So everything I didn't get in this season, I'm going to get it in the pages. But you see that in Endeavor. You see that growth. That is what's so fantastic about this show. There's no real filler episodes like there is in most other shows. Every filler episode they have, it's a reason, because it's piloting the story further, and you're getting more of the pertinent information. It's driving the story to go further and open up in different directions. This was so phenomenal about this show.
Yeah, I'm glad that there's no fillers for My Hero, because we talked about like Naruto in the last collaboration. Like, Naruto is an amazing anime, but there is just so much fucking fillers. As a viewer, it just doesn't. I don't seem to be like. If I see filler episodes, it just makes me not want to watch it anymore. Which is one of many reasons why I started reading manga, because I got tired of waiting. So and plus people spoil things, so just read ahead.
It is wild, man. And like I said, you know what? I just had a thought. We should do this at the beginning of every. Oh fuck, we can't do it because you know what's going to happen. Damn it, Ricky. Why do you got to read the shit his head up? It's like we should do a before and after. Maybe we can just recap the seasons from now on. Whenever they release a new My Hero season, or we can do it like do two of them, because they always do that half season split. Speaking of half season split, well, let me finish the thought. We should do a recap of, the beginning and the end of the first arc and then second arc, and that could be something fun we can do, as well as more of these collabs. Because like I said, I like doing this shit. It's fun as hell getting to talk to somebody that's doing the same thing I'm doing and has just as much fun that I'm doing what I'm doing and you're doing what you're doing, and then we have this common ground, whether it's comic books, My Hero, Dragon Ball Z, whatever it is. I feel like we should do something like that. What was the point I was getting ready to make that? Shit, I don't know, Ricky. This is your podcast. You tell me where you want to go next. I can't remember what I was going to bring up.
No, it's okay. It's just on the topic of like common ground. I know that you're really into comic books too. And before we were recording, you showed me that comic yet, the Chew, right?
Oh yeah,
from Image Comics. I've never. Is that a volume that you have? Like that, just a volume?
Yeah. This one's back. I want to say it was like 2009 is when this one came out. This is volume 1. You get this one for $9.99, right, at all your comic book stores. So 2011 is when this one dropped. So this, I want to say it wrapped up a couple years ago. And what's crazy is, I'll just read a little bit of description. Tony Chu is a detective with a secret, a weird secret. Tony Chu is a chibopathic, which means he gets psychic impressions from whatever he eats. It also means he's a hell of a detective as long as he doesn't mind nibbling on the corpse of a murderer victim to figure out who done it, right? And so what he means by that is if he tastes something, this is in a world where chicken is illegal, right? You can't have chicken at all. If you get caught with it, it's like getting caught with meth, right? So they throw you away, they take you to jail and all this shit. So there's this fucking chef on TV and he's cutting stuff up, and then he ends up cutting his finger, and then that blood gets dropped into the soup essentially, right? And then Tony eats that, and then he's like, oh shit, this chef killed somebody years ago. And he sees it in flashes. Dude, it is such a dope fucking book, man. I've been reading this one since 2011, but it came up in one of my previous podcasts, I think with Rachel Luckett, maybe. I'm one of the writers for the Ed Boys. And we were talking comics because we got super, super nerdy on comics. But it's one of those books that I can't put out there enough. So if you guys can go check, and I have no stake in the game. I'm not fucking sponsored by Image or Jonathan Lehman or Rob Gilroy. Nothing like that. It's just a fan loving this book, man. Check this one out. It's so fun.
Yeah, that was actually a good episode that you had with Rachel, because I geeked out when you guys are talking about My Hero and like her being like an Ed Boys writer geeking out about My Hero. I'm like, holy shit, she likes My Hero too.
Yeah, well, what's crazy about her is everybody that I would talk to with Rachel was she has an encyclopedic knowledge of the Eds. Like they tried when that show was happening, Danny didn't want to do any of the same gags, any of the same anything. He wanted something different each time. And Danny Antonucci is the creator of Ed, Edd and Eddy for the fans that might not know. So they would essentially, what everybody would tell me was they would essentially go to her like, no, you guys did that in season 3, episode 2, the second part. So she's like that fucking like on top of her shit. And she's one of the coolest people I've ever got to talk to, because we went like Harry Potter, My Hero, And then, of course, we talked a little bit about the Ed Boys, what she was, fucking known for. And then she wrote comics too, so she was throwing out all these recommendations and shit like this. So that was like a real fun episode, real treat for me.
Like when I listen to your content, man, like from the explosive episode that you had with all three Ed Boys till now, like I really enjoy seeing you talk to like a lot of animators and people in the production team, because like most shows, they don't get the limelight. Like no one really acknowledges the animators or the people who draw all the panels and stuff like that. It's always like voice actors or the writers that usually get more of the shine. But what you're doing with your podcast, like I said, it's amazing to see like all these behind the scenes people talking about what their experiences were. And you got this snowball effect going on with the Ed Boys. Now that you can talk to like the top guys, you're going into like all the production and all that stuff. And I think that's really cool that you're exploring that whole realm of the Ed Boys, like giving a more personal aspect to it, because now with you talking to all these, again, with all these illustrators and all that, we get to see like what their thoughts were on the show. Like why did they go into like drawing cartoons or working into a production like this? Because Ed, Edd n Eddy was a huge show for people our age growing up, and even for myself, like I still remember watching Ed, Edd n Eddy, and my mom would hate it because she was like, those cartoons are so ugly, like why are you watching it, and I liked it, and now again, just to bring it back, like it's just really cool to see what you've done talking to a lot of these people that are behind the scenes that don't get the camera time, or that don't get to be able to share their stories with the show.
Yeah, when I think, I don't know if we talked about it on the first time we talked for our first part 1 and part 2. I originally started out just wanting to talk to the Ninja Turtle crew for the first Ninja Turtle movie. You can't tell behind me, ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot's changed since the last time we talked. I did some redecorating and reorganizing and shit. I'm a huge Ninja Turtle fan. You see them all over my arm and shit. That's what got me into the pop culture world, right? So I was watching that first Ninja Turtle movie from 1990, and I started seeing all these names pop up, and I'm like, oh, fuck, dude, why do I know the cast, but I don't know the crew? If I don't know the crew, the people that worked so hard on this movie, making, fake shit come to life for me at 4 or 5 years old, like, why don't I know these names? And then I reached out to a guy, or I saw a name, and I just, thank you to Gary Proper for making this happen type of thing. And I looked him up. Come to find out, he's 30, 45 minutes down the road from me. The guy that helped bring the Ninja Turtles, without the cartoon in '87, set off Turtle Mania. Right? It started it wasn't just about the indie fans that were into this anymore. It was appealing to kids, and, parents were starting to come around to it too, because they see these 4 turtles, they're wholesome, they're breathing family and all this other shit. And it was crazy, right? When this show was happening, and then this movie happens, and then it completely explodes into the stratosphere. Then you really have Turtle Mania, right? And then I see this guy's name, and he's from New Smyrna Beach. And I'm like, huh. So I Google him, find out he died a year prior to me starting my podcast. I'm like, fuck. And then I read an article. That article that I read, I called the guy that wrote that article for the New Smyrna Times or New Smyrna Journal, whatever it was. And I was like, hey, man, I'm doing this thing. I don't know what I'm doing just yet. Can you please call me back? Because I had some questions on an article you wrote last year. He calls me back, and he tells me the entire story about how he was in a Detroit, of all places, a Detroit comic book store, Ricky. Detroit is where you're from. So think about that for a second, right? Detroit. He picks up an issue of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #1, right? This is in '87. So this is 3 years after Peter Laird and Kevin Eastman released the first issue of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, right? That whole thing was contained, that whole story was contained in one issue. They killed the Shredder, spoiler alert. They killed the Shredder at the end of the first comic book, right? Then this thing's getting turned into a cartoon series. And then, like, this is the next movie. We have to get this done. So 87, 88, it kept getting shot down. And then finally, I think in end of 88, early 89 is when they optioned this movie to turn it into a movie. So this guy that was a surfer, a big wave surfer or a longboard surfer, I can't remember which one, was a manager for Gallagher, a guy that used to smash shit with a hammer when he was a comedian and stuff like that. And then that turned into him meeting these 2 people, and then them finally getting the Ninja Turtles, right? So the whole reason I bring up that story is because I wanted to know all of these people that I don't know. Why do I know Corey Feldman, the voice of Donatello, but I don't know Gary Proper? I don't know Kim Dawson. I don't know all these people that made this movie. And I started reaching out to all these people. It was just going to be the Turtle Tapes, is what my original podcast name was going to be. And then I was working with a guy, and then he ghosted me for 2 months. He wanted the content that I had that had nothing to do with the 90s movie, and they wanted to put on their YouTube channel that already had 13,000 subscribers or whatever it was. They had a pretty decent following. And then he just ghosted me. I'm like, you know what? I don't want to do this. I want to talk to everybody. I want to know that people's names that I didn't know prior, but I always saw popping up on cartoon to cartoon, movie to movie, TV to TV. And like you just said, they didn't get the same rub that the creators got. They didn't get the same rub that the voice actors got. You know, those guys were in there, guys and gals, excuse me, days and nights, hour after hour after hour, making sure that our childhood, and it was just a job to them. If you talk to most of them, it's just a job to them. But they made our childhood so fucking phenomenal. And I want people to know their faces, their stories, and everything about them just as much as they know the creations that they worked on.
And that's truly amazing to know that you're willing to go that far out for their content. You know, I keep going back to Rachel because she was one of your more recent guests. I know you had other writers and creators on your podcast too, but I think it was really cool that she was able to remember all those, like, because the Ed Boys were like 20 years ago.
Maybe in 99, and then it ended in 2009.
Yeah, so almost 20 years ago, and she still remembered all the content there that she made or she drew. And I think that was really, again, it's really cool to see that you're able to let them share their experiences, because that's something that I was like, not saying that I want to do exactly that, but I feel like a lot of people who grew up with, especially with the cartoons or anime, like you got to know like who's producing this stuff, and yes, that there's jobs in the entertainment field that you can actually pursue. Like one thing in the Hmong community, like I was telling you in the first part, is like there's a lot of musicians, and I don't see a lot of like Hmong podcasters or artists or cartoonists or animators. There's some now that are slowly coming out, but it's like we don't see that. We don't see people in my community reaching out for that type of career field when it comes to like arts and entertainment, and everyone just wants to be like mainstream or be a personality on the internet. Like there's other options out there that we can do, as like not just my people, but for anyone who wants to be in the arts and stuff like that. There are jobs out there for folks out there who want to pursue that. You know, you don't have to be just a voice actor. You can work and do other things related to that field. And so I think that's what's great about what you're doing, is that you're showing not just those creators and the people who make the content, but there's also opportunities for people who want to be like that and working in those fields.
Yeah, it really does. And the one interview that I had that completely changed my outlook on this, and like I said, I talked to so many people from the AKA crew, which produced Ed, Ed, and Eddie. And I've just been, like I said on the last podcast, I've just been extremely lucky that, one, they want to talk to me, and two, they keep coming back. I keep asking them, but they keep coming back, you know? And I haven't told anybody this one yet. And I'll get back to the previous story in just a second, but I'm going to be doing, so the Big Picture Show was the finale, essentially, of Ed, Ed, and Eddie. During that time, a guy named Stuart Snyder was taking over Cartoon Network, and they were trying to make Cartoon Network look more like MTV, more like VH1. Ladies and gentlemen, you probably don't know what VH1 is. Google it. And Nickelodeon and Disney, where everything was like live action, reality-based drama and all that other stuff. So they were essentially trying to take cartoons out of Cartoon Network. So a lot of the creators were essentially getting the axes. And I had Maxwell Adams on, which was the creator for Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy. His is a heartbreaking story. It's 2.5 hours, I believe. It is a phenomenal story, but it is heartbreaking when you hear what happened to him. Gendy Tartakovsky, the creator of Dexter's Lab, Samurai Jack, Primal, and he's also working on a unicorn show that I don't think is for Cartoon Network or Adult Swim, but I know it's being worked on. And he's also the director for all 3 Hotel Transylvania movies. This man is my favorite animator of all time. He gets fired. Craig McCracken, the creator of the Powerpuff Girls, the creator of Foster's Home for Imaginary Kids, the creator of Wander Over Yonder on Disney, and the guy that's doing Kid Cosmic right now for Netflix, he gets fired. So they're doing all of this shake-up shit, right? So I'm talking to them and I'm hearing this story, and then I have a man named Robert Alvarez on, which was a animation director that's been in this industry for 53 years, right? So he's worked on almost everything Gendy's done, almost everything Craig has done, almost everything that anybody has done during that huge era for Cartoon Network in the mid 90s to mid 2000s. He's still doing some stuff. He did the regular show as well as an animation director. But I was talking to him, and before you talk to anybody, if you're thinking to start a podcast, you always do something called a pre-interview. And you just sit there and say, hey, what would you like us not to talk about? Or I won't bring up this, I won't bring up that. Is there anything you don't want me to bring up? You just want to make sure it's trying to get to know the person for the first time in 2 or 3 minutes before you get rolled. That way you get the nervousness from either you or your guest out of the way. And he told me before we started that this is the first time, or no, I take that back, that he can count on one hand how many times he's been interviewed about his career. Think about that. 53 years in the industry. He'd worked on Dexter's Lab, Powerpuff Girls, Samurai Jack. He worked on the Ninja Turtles. He worked on a pup named Scooby-Doo. He's worked on the Smurfs, the Jetsons, regular show, Close Enough on HBO Max. All of these fucking shows. And this is the first time anybody has really ever been interested in what he had to do. And that sat and resonated with me. I'm like, dude, that hit. Like, there was a point in time where when he was telling me this story, I wanted to fucking cry. Because there's nothing worse than being in the artistic field and working these hours, working these countless days, and just putting in the time and the work and the work and the work, and nobody wanting to ask you your opinion on what you did on your career. Even though you were a vital part of the train that just kept going, nobody gives a shit about the conductor. They want to know about the guy that made the train. They want to know about the guy that was sitting there barking out, hey, ticket, 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 the voice actors. They want to know those people. And there's nothing wrong with those people right there. But there's so much more than just the creators. There's so much more than just the voice actors. There's the people that were in the trenches on a day-to-day basis that don't get to talk about what they did. And I think that's a huge travesty. And it sounds pretentious, I know. But I feel like I have to do this because there's nobody else doing that. And I don't want these people to fade into obscurity. God damn, I keep fucking... It's like I've been drinking all day or something. When I don't drink, I haven't smoked before this. So maybe that's the issue. But I don't want these people to fade into obscurity and they not know the contributions that they made to my childhood. But maybe your childhood and your friends and your family's childhood. And I'm passing these shows on to my son, my oldest son now. And then eventually when my youngest son gets to the age where he can watch some shit, I'm going to pass those down to him. That way, nobody will ever forget the people that worked on these shows. And I feel like that's what I have to do with this podcast. It sounds pretentious. It sounds douchey. I know. Look at me, holier than art thou. I'm doing all of this for a noble cause. But that's what I feel like I have to do with my podcast.
Yeah, I think a lot of these people that you speak to, man, like I said before, is just, like we got to be able to see what they're going through. And even in Japan, like a lot of animators nowadays, they're starting to speak up because they're working like crazy amount of hours just to produce a show that everyone wants to watch. I feel bad for a lot of these people who don't get to be able to speak their thoughts on the show or to even just give a little insight, like, oh, I did this, I drew the panels for this, or I maybe they gave an idea to the show that no one knew that it was their idea, and it's really cool to see that these people are finally getting a voice through your podcast. And I hope that, the more you grow your content, like there's other people that you're going to bring on as well, besides just the Ed Boys and the Cartoon Network folks. Like it'll be pretty cool to see, like, if you get like SpongeBob people on your show as well,
They are so, here's the thing. I want to learn Japanese just so I can bring on animators, because everybody that's worked on these shows that we've talked about, from My Hero to Dragon Ball Z to Naruto, they're all in Japan, right? They all speak Japanese. Very few of them speak English, right? So I would never go to somebody else's country and expect them to know my language, right? I just think that's extremely douchey. Whenever I would go to other countries, you would get like a little pamphlet in the military that would tell you certain things. And just, I know I said I had to get out of here at 3:15. He's running late, so they're not going to get back anytime soon. So I can go until about 3:45. So I don't want to cut you short or anything like that. So we can go to about 3:45 if you're up for it. Okay. I wouldn't expect to have somebody else in their homeland know how to speak my language. I think that's just extremely it's a douchey thing to do. You go over to some place and you expect them to know your language when you're in their home, right? So that's one thing I wanted, even though I will never learn Japanese enough to have a conversation. That's one of the hardest languages to learn. But I wish I could speak Japanese so I could have these animators on, these people that have brought just countless hours. And I don't know specifically about you, but my anime knowledge is very limited, right? I'm very basic. Like Dragon Ball Z, I can talk to you about. I can talk about Dragon Ball. I can talk about My Hero and a couple other things here and there. But for the most part, my anime exposure is very, very small. I would love to be able to talk to everybody that's ever worked on not only the manga, but also the animation, because it's something that's starting to, and if I say this word, I don't mean it in a negative light, starting to infiltrate into American pop culture. More fans are starting to look at anime for the beautiful story that it is, right? These long overarching stories that they've woven into these little mini arcs. In the character development for anime, in my opinion, there's not very many American-made shows that have the same kind of character-driven and character development that some of these anime shows have. Like, they are deep into knowledge and just building this universe around these characters and making you feel for these characters in a way that I think American animation is like fucking 5-6 years behind. Just for me specifically. And I talk to a lot of American animation and Canadian animation people and all that other shit. But man, Japanese influence you're starting to see come into American animation. And it's fucking amazing to see what they've done for decades that we're just starting to get over here. And it's starting to blow up, you know?
Yeah, seeing anime getting more mainstream, especially here in the States, it's beyond crazy. Because, you know, we were talking about earlier in the first part, like how you said you used to get bullied for, like, in comic books and all that stuff. It was the same for me, but for anime. Like, I never really got bullied for it, but I was such a closet anime nerd. I didn't want to talk about it because I knew that there was people that was going to give me shit for it. And I remember in high school, my freshman year, I had this computer class, and you know, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but like we use proxies to break through the school firewalls and stuff to watch like a lot of anime or like go on social media and stuff like that. So I used the proxy to watch anime, and there was a kid right behind me who was like, "Hey, you like Bleach too?" And I closed it. I'm like, "Nope, I don't like Bleach." You know, because like I did not want to let anyone know that I was into that stuff. And
like, shut up, you're gonna get me beaten up.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and it's just seeing this stuff now, like with the growth of conventions and comic books and even anime and all that, getting more mainstream. It's really cool to see that. But now it's like, it's kind of like reverse now, right? Like, if you don't like the MCU, then you're not cool. I was like, no, that was never the point to be cool. It was just, we like this stuff because of the story content, the writers, the animation, the characters. Like, that's why we liked it. It's not to bully people or to use that power, but like, you know, oh, if you don't like I see this a lot with anime fan bases and whatever. Like, a lot of these younger folk are like, you know, if you're not with the fandom, that's the word I'm looking for, fandoms. If you're not into like the My Hero fandom, then you're not cool. Or if you like One Piece over Naruto, then you're trash. Like, there's lots of fandoms going back and forth. It's developing cliques versus like how it was back in like where you had the jocks and like the nerds and whatever. Like, that's what the cliques are now. Like, you got all these different fandoms, you got all these different people with their opinions, and yes, the mainstream ones are really cool. For example, like Demon Slayer, My Hero, Naruto, One Piece. Those are like the top. But then, like, you know, there's all other great anime series that's out there that, you know, that are like 12 episode seasons that are really, really good that no one knows about. And I think it's, if you're really a true anime fan, you got to be open to all sorts of genres and stuff. Like, there's one that I truly enjoy. It's called Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid. And I don't know if it's exactly mainstream, but this anime took me by surprise. It's literally about a dragon who has an obsession with the human that she's talking to, who's Kobayashi. It's a I guess you could call it a Yuri genre, where it's like two female protagonists. And so the dragon Toru is like, she's obsessed with Kobayashi, and she's pretty much her maid and does whatever she wants. And it's really lighthearted, familial type of the ordeal of this anime. And I was caught off guard by this because I only saw like clips on Crunchyroll where they show you like clips and pieces of the anime. And I watched like the animation by Kyoto Animation is by far one of the greatest things ever. But they just showcase like this little family, and it's just like I'm watching this series. I'm like, wow, you know, like I'm into all the shonen stuff, like all this hardcore anime stuff, and now I'm like switching over to like Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid and even Rent a Girlfriend, like all these romance rom-com animes. And I find myself watching this stuff. I'm like, man, I would have never admitted to liking this stuff as a young kid. You know, like it's so crazy to see. What was that?
I said, I'm glad you brought that up. I was searching for a pen and paper, right?
Okay.
So obviously I'm knee deep into the mainstream shit like the My Heroes. I'm still trying to get into Dragon Slayer. My son's telling me how great it is. He's trying to tell me it's better than My Hero. He's like, you just got to get 12 episodes in. I'm like, dude, I was hooked after the first episode of My Hero, so your argument completely gets thrown out the window right now. But if you had to say 3 animes that aren't so much mainstream that you would put, I always put this kind of recommendation on there. If I ever tell somebody, hey, go get this book, Chew, right? I will say you get a kick in the nuts guarantee. If you don't like this book, you can kick me in the nuts. Hasn't happened yet, so I only give this out to really good I only give out good recommendations is what I'm getting at, Ricky. So if you had to sit there and say, hey, I'm gonna give you 2 or 3 animes that have a kick in the nuts guarantee, what would they be?
Okay, first one for sure, Konosuba. I'll write it out too so you can see it.
Okay.
So Konosuba, it's like I don't know the exact. Let me just make a banner here real quick. So it's like a long title, but pretty much it's essentially just what this is called. It's called Konosuba.
Yeah.
That's the first one. I'd say it's not exactly like underrated, but it's not too. From what I know, I don't think it's too mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
Another one would be Rent a Girlfriend, which is getting more traction now. Before it wasn't even like a big deal. Now it's like it's huge. So Rent a Girlfriend, and then I'd say Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid. So,
and for the fans, I apologize. So
yeah. So these are all like
yeah,
they're not like shonen action themed animes at all. So these are like, I don't know for you, Julian. I think it might be kind of weird watching it at first, but I promise you, like these 3 anime here are the ones that like took me by surprise as a viewer.
I'll give them a shot.
Want a simpler way to record both video and audio podcasts? Then sign up with StreamYard. StreamYard is the perfect program to create podcasts, host live streams, and even do video calls. There are many tools to help you create and design your own personal studio. You can screen share, read live comments, and stream to multiple destinations such as Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. You can also download your video and audio recordings after each session. Follow the link in the description, and once you sign up with the basic or pro plan, you'll earn a $10 credit to use for StreamYard. Do you want to start your own podcast? Then sign up with Buzzsprout. Buzzsprout has helped hundreds of thousands of users to begin their podcasting journey. With easy-to-use tools, you can effectively get your podcast onto many platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, iHeartRadio, and more. You can view stats, create audio clips, and even have your own podcasting website. Buzzsprout also offers ideas, tips, tricks, and tutorials to help you improve your podcast. Follow the link below, and once you sign up, you'll get a $20 Amazon gift card. This will let Buzzsprout know that I sent you and also support Spoiler Force Podcast. Happy podcasting. If you're into anime, manga, or anything that's from Japan, Otaku Detroit is the place for you. Located at 513 West, 11 Mile Road in Madison Heights, Michigan, you can find a variety of manga books, anime figures, collectibles, posters, snacks, and even authentic items from Japan. Stop on by to see store owner Matt and let him know Spoiler Force sent you. But yeah, man, like there's so many genres for anime, which is why I'm kind of like going more into anime themed content now versus like comic books before. There was one comic book that I wanted to bring up to you, because you're a chef as well, and I'm pretty sure you are familiar with who he is. But Anthony Bourdain, before he passed away, he wrote a series called Hungry Ghost. I can share the screen with you right here. I actually bought it because it was Anthony Bourdain, and it's really cool to see that. Yeah, so this is what it is. I'll zoom this up here. So this was like one of his comic books that he wrote, and you know, with Bourdain, man, like he was a big influence to me when I was growing up, like in middle school to high school, because my dad watched him a lot, and you know, I think what I'm bringing this to is like, you know, with Bourdain's content and what he's done was like bring a lot of people together whether it was food or culture or travel. And I think that with podcasting, it's similar to that. And I really enjoy, like I said, with your content as well. It's similar. I see a lot of similarities with Bourdain's work compared to like what you do and what I do, like bringing a variety of people together, whether it's just through culture or through work or through content. And, you know, with what he's done, man, I swear it's what was one of the things that really motivated me. And I wanted to ask you, like, was Bourdain one of those people that helped you as well, like when it came to like creating content or even with food?
So let me preface this with, last year during COVID sucked for a lot of people in the restaurant industry. I feel like we got hit harder. And if I get teary-eyed here, I apologize, because Anthony Bourdain he was somebody special in this industry. You know, he'd be the first one to tell you, and it's not like I was friends with him, but I've read almost every book, and I intentionally did not pick up Hungry Ghosts because I saw this shortly after he passed away, and I have not been able to watch. There's two people that are so difficult to watch now that they're no longer here. Anthony Bourdain being one of them, and Robin Williams, my favorite actor of all time. Both of them, the commonalities right there is they killed themselves. And if you want to go deeper into it, the other thing that they had in common was their how do I put this? It was their presence that united so many people. Like Robin, whenever you would see him on TV, he was always trying to make somebody smile. And what they always say about people that are the saddest is they're always trying to bring joy into somebody else's life so they can feel a little piece of that, so they cannot see the darkness that they're seeing on a consistent basis. Anthony, and so that's why I have not picked up this book, but I wrote it down, and it's something that I'm going to force myself to read, because yes, he was a huge influence to me. Not so much in a way that I wanted to mirror his cooking, because like I said, if you read any of his books, he'll be the first one to tell you it's not like he was the greatest chef of all time. He was the one, and there's a great podcast out now, and we brought up Brogan a little while ago, and if you get to see that episode in order to understand why I call him Brogan. But he has the producer, and for the life of me, I can't remember her name, of the new Anthony Bourdain movie, Roadrunner. And she's talking about how he never looked at himself. And like I said, in his books, he describes this to himself, that he never said he was the greatest chef of all time. Like he wouldn't even put himself up there in a list. There were so many other chefs that were before him. He just saw a guy that he led a team to do something. Right. So he had this very humble way of looking at himself. But one thing he did do, and I don't want to say it's debatable, but there's so many people in my industry that I've talked to that when he comes up, they go, oh man, he wasn't that great. No. He might have not been the greatest chef, where you look at somebody like a Gordon Ramsay, where you know that, oh, he's got this TV personality, but he's also got 3 Michelin stars in a bunch of his restaurants to back up the credibility of what his resume is deep. With Bourdain specifically, this man opened up my eyes to what cooking could be, to what food could be. And I brought this story up a couple different times, and I'll make this one brief. But when I went to Italy when I was 17 years old, I got to see, I wasn't with my mom, I wasn't with any of my family. I went with my Italian teacher in high school, as well as the entire language, what do they call it? Shit. There was like it wasn't like a language team, but like you'd have like the jocks, you'd have the chess people, and it was like a language club type of thing. If you took so many years of a specific language, you were opted in to go to this trip, and it just happened to be Italy that year. You had to pay for the whole trip and everything like that. The only requirement was you had to have so many years of a foreign language. And I always wanted to learn Italian because I wanted to watch The Godfather without having to read the subtitles. I wanted to be in the mafia when I was younger, before I knew what the mafia did. And then I find out they don't take Irish German dudes. They've got their own mafia, but the Italians didn't take us because we weren't Sicilian. We weren't Italian by blood. And that opened up my opinion and my idea of what food can be. Usually when I start a conversation, it's like, hey, what movie were you into? What TV were you into? Or TV show were you into? But with food, it's just like that. And when I prefaced earlier about COVID, it took a lot of my passion for this industry completely out of me. Ever since I was 12, I wanted to be a chef. That has been my lifelong dream. Before that, I actually wanted to be in animation. It wasn't until I went to Universal Studios and saw a guy when they were getting ready to put SpongeBob on TV before Nickelodeon Studios closed down in Orlando, Florida, ripping down papers and drawings of stuff and starting over because he didn't think it was good enough. I saw right then and there, I don't think I could be in animation because everything I thought I was drawing at the time was really, really good. And my mom would enjoy that and put it up on the refrigerator. So that kind of dovetailed into me cooking for my younger brothers and sisters at such a young age. And then my mom working 2 jobs and her not being home, early enough to, I would have to start dinner. I started getting this fascination with food. It started with Emeril Lagasse. He had the entire world captivated on what he was doing. And then it slowly started opening up to like, oh, he's doing this. And then I see Mario Batali. Then I see Anthony Bourdain. And then everybody had such different styles, different ways of looking at food. And the whole reason I brought up, like I said, the COVID, it took a lot of passion out of me. When somebody can sit here and say, you have to go home, you don't have a job right now, it does something to you. And like I said, I had it a lot easier than a lot of people did during COVID, I'm sure. I saved a lot of money when I was in the military, so I was just fine. It took like 4.5 months to get my first unemployment check because in Florida, it's fucking dog shit when it comes to that internet system for unemployment. But I was okay. My wife was okay. My family was okay. We were good. But it crushed my passion for this industry. Now, the place I work at now, I go there and I give my all. Whatever I do, I give my all. So, but I don't want to say I just clock in to clock out. But I don't want to put my heart out there like I did before COVID, because there's nothing worse than getting your heart broken, right? Like I said, when COVID hit, it tore my passion away from this industry. It wasn't until I started watching Bourdain recently again where I started to feel that passion come back in. And I don't want to say that I will do cooking for the rest of my life. Once the podcast completely takes off and I'm self-sufficient on income, that's what I want to transition into, because I can do that regardless if I'm home, on the road, in a hotel, in a different country. I can do that as long as I have an internet connection, somebody to talk to, and a laptop. But with Bourdain specifically, I know this is a long story and I apologize, but with Bourdain, he had a way of making you look at something more than just food. He went to places that not very many Americans will see. I've seen some shit, right? I haven't been to the craziest places in the world, but I've been to some pretty crazy places around this world. I've seen some shit. I was never in a war. I was never shot at, so I don't want people to think like get misinterpreted by that. But I've just seen some stuff, right? Been around the block. And like I said, when that passion was taken away and Bourdain died a couple years before that, it felt weird. Like wanting to look up to this dude and wanting to watch everything that he did and everything he talked about. And then knowing that in his darkest hour, he could not handle whatever he was going through, whether it was pressure, whether he was depressed, whether it was drug induced, whatever the fuck it was. It's none of my business. He took his own life. That was the only thing he had control of, right? That was the only thing at the end of the day that he physically had control of. Somebody told him when he woke up where he was going to be, what they were doing that day. His whole day was structured. So I can only imagine the pressure and the stress he was going through. And this job specifically in the food industry is super stressful. On a consistent basis, you can be made or broken by one review. One shitty person, a shitty review I get on my podcast all the time, right, can make or break an entire establishment. This industry is super difficult. That man, regardless of what he thought about or what people thought about him, he brought a voice to people like myself. And I don't want to say I'm like him because I'm giving a voice to people like the Robert Alvarez's of the world, like the animators and the writers. But yes, to answer, long story short, to answer your original question, was he an influence? Yes, 100%. I feel like he's more of an influence in my podcasting than he is in my cooking, because I can only do what people tell me to cook. I don't own the restaurant. I'm not the head chef, the executive chef there. So my stuff doesn't go on the menu when I want to put it on the menu. I'm a soldier in a long line of soldiers, right? So I have to do what I'm told to an extent.
Perfect.
Podcasting, like I said, I want to take what he was preaching, uniting people through a common bond that for him was food, but for me, it's pop culture and all that shit. So to answer your question, I'm sorry it took so long to get there, but I feel like that was not a loaded question in a bad sense, but there was so many elements to that question that I wanted to make sure I attempted to address. Yes, he was a huge influence, and he is missed so much. His voice was so important to this industry.
I agree with that 100%. Like with Bourdain, man, like for myself, like I just really enjoyed what he brought when it came to just culture and bringing people together. That's what I growing up with his TV show and like my dad was a bigger Bourdain fan than I was, but
yeah.
Because seeing him just go through life like that and just bringing so many people together is what like helps. It's one of many influences for my podcast too. Is like that. That's why I feel like that's why I want to just talk to a variety of folks and get different perspectives on what they do, whether they're an artist or voice actor or whatever. It's all about just building some sort of community and bringing all of us together to just realize like we're not all so different after all. Yes. And we can all share something together, whether it's through podcasts or cartoons or whatever. It's just his work was so impactful, and that it's just like I brought him up because again with the whole comic book of Hungry Ghosts and stuff like that, I'm pretty sure a lot of folks who don't know that's what he wrote. And what was kind of sad for me was like when I bought that book, I think it was just before, I believe his book came out just before he committed suicide or something like that.
Yeah.
And I was really just shattered because like I read that first issue and then I was like, one day if I ever meet Bourdain, I want him to sign this. And that happened. And I was just like, oh my God, what do I do? You know, and I have all the entire collection. I think it's only like 4 issues. And what kind of made me upset too was like when I went on eBay and stuff, like after he passed, like people were trying to flip that material. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like people were trying to flip his work because of what's happened. Like, no, I kept mine. I was like, I'm keeping that #1 issue. I probably won't even open it anymore, but like I just kept it. And I feel like again with Bourdain's work, man, like he influenced me a lot just by trying to view other people and try to understand people more, whether it's through food or just through conversation. And, as we come to an end here, Julian, I believe that his influence has impacted the both of us, whether it's just through food or through communication or through whatever. It's just, I really like that how what we were doing as podcasters is just like bringing in light to other people who need it, and it's really cool to collaborate with you, man, because I don't feel like when we podcast together, I feel like it's just us hanging out. It's not like where it's superficial or like, oh man, we should talk about this, talk about that. It's, it's whatever that comes to mind. It's just, this is what I feel like collaboration should be. It's not trying to like one up each other, or it's not trying to dig each other's like, brain for content or whatever. It's just, we're sharing our experiences as creators, and with your journey, Julian, I've from day one when I first messaged you about collaborating, man, and seeing your work, I truly appreciate seeing you grow your content. Now you're over 4,000 subscribers, and it's insane. It's like I can literally call myself a day one fan because I reached out to you before you, like just after you dropped your Rob Paulson episode, and I gotta say, man, like your work truly inspires me as a podcaster. Like I haven't been able to put out as much content as I wanted to of what's happened earlier this year, and seeing your growth, it really inspires me. You always bring up the whole Goku and Vegeta thing. I feel like for us, it's like that. Like I need someone that I have to see like, oh shit, I gotta like bring up my game because there's someone out there that's not doing better, but there's someone out there that's grinding just as hard or even more to get to what they want. And I have to see myself as that. I got to get myself there too, because it's really hard, especially with this I guess you could say industry, but with the just content creating, there's so many people doing podcasts. There's so many people trying to do interviews, and it gets, it does. Yeah, you get lost in it. Exactly. Like it's very challenging at times. I've had some days where I just feel like, man, I want to quit, and not do this anymore.
That's normal. Like on a day-to-day basis, I wake up and it feels so. I don't. Before, and like I said, I've got a little bit longer if you do. Before we go any further past Anthony Bourdain, ladies and gentlemen, if you're having thoughts of suicide, please reach out to somebody. I've had so many, and I'm gonna try not to get teary-eyed here. I've had a couple friends kill themselves. I've had a few people that I've known kill themselves. Before you decide to make whatever decision you want to make, and that is your decision alone. Just know that no matter what you're going through right now, there is light at the end of the tunnel. I brought this up with my Tony Sampson episode because the voice of Eddie tried to kill himself. He took a fistful of pills, I think is what he said, and he wanted it to end, and it didn't. And then he noticed after therapy and thinking about himself that there was light at the end of the tunnel. Thank you for putting that up, because I put that up during my episode. And like I said, if you're thinking about suicide, it always gets better. It can get better. It will get better. Please, I don't fucking care. Reach out to me. Reach out to Ricky. Reach out to a friend, a mother, a father. Reach out to somebody before you make that ultimate decision, because you might not be in physical pain, but there's going to be so much things that you miss that will be great, that will pale in comparison to the darkness that you really see yourself in. And I'm butchering this shit, I know. But trying to talk about a subject that most people don't want to talk about is tough. But like I said, there's somebody out there that will help. And before we push on to anything else, like I feel like if there was one thing somebody, could have done, they will do for you if you're in that state. But getting off of the suicide topic and going back to what you originally said, there's days that you do not feel like podcasting. I don't like talking too personal about some of my stuff, but I feel like during episodes of podcasting, when stuff like this comes up, people really, really appreciate it. I've had a lot of people reach out. And like I said, I'm trying to take more of an approach where I'm just not reading comments and I'm not looking at what other people think. But there's just some of them that get to me. And it doesn't mean you can say all this stuff and then I'll respond to you, because I do what I want to do. Nobody forces me to do anything I don't want to do. But there's days where I wake up and I feel like it's imposter syndrome. Like I said, I'm on a very small scale when it comes to podcasting. Yeah, I have 4,000 subscribers on YouTube. What does that actually mean? That means on a given day, I might have 100 people watch a video. I might have 2 people watch a video. I might have 1,000 people watch a video. Or if you look at my Ed and Eddie podcast with all 3 of those guys, I have 137,000 people that watch that video, right? What does that mean? Absolutely nothing. At the end of the day, it doesn't mean anything. What means something to me is getting to talk to somebody like Ricky, somebody like the people I have on, where we have this, I don't want to say the same feeling, but like I said, you said there's days where you just want to quit. There's weeks and months that I want to quit. And a lot of people see that as like, wow, he says he has fun. This is the most fun he's ever had. Yeah, life is messy. Life is tricky. Life is hard, but life is easy, right? There's no black and white. There's gray in almost everything we do. Monday, a couple days before my Craig McCracken interview, which is the Powerpuff Girls creator and all that other shit we talked about earlier, I woke up and I wanted to cancel everything. I wanted to shut everything down, and I wanted to get away. I didn't want to go to work. I didn't want to get up. I didn't want to have anything. I felt like an imposter. What I mean by that, I didn't feel like anything I was doing was worthwhile. Whether it's podcasting, whether it's the job I do, whether it's being a father, whether it's being a husband, whether it's being a friend, whether it's being a human being, I didn't feel like I mattered. And I'm not trying to say that to get sympathy from anybody, because that's not what this is about. This is about that life is hard. No matter how much fun you have in something, at the end of the day, you're always going to have to do stuff you don't want to do, whether it's go to work in a shitty job you don't want to work at, or you're in a shitty relationship, or you have a shitty time doing anything, you know, there's always good and bad with everything. But I wanted to shut everything down for the podcast on 4 or 5 different occasions over the last 10 months of starting this podcast. It wasn't until 20 minutes of focusing on my breathing, just in, out, in, out, in, out, hold it for 5 seconds, take another deep breath for 5 seconds, right? Getting time to myself before I let somebody else tell me what I have to do or what I need to do. That I realized that this shit's going to happen. I'm going to wake up on days, just like you said, and not want to fucking do this. Rogan has said it. The guy with the biggest podcast ever has got on TV or got on his podcast to say, there's days I just don't want to fucking do this shit. There's days that I just want to be left alone. There's days that I don't want to be put into a spotlight. And his spotlight is a lot brighter than mine. Very, like, I have a light bulb compared to his stadium lights, is what I'm getting at. Or a flashlight compared to his stadium lights. So if somebody can say that at the height of his game and normalize it, it's okay to feel that way. It's okay to want to quit because this shit is hard. It's easy if you make it easy, but it's all about perspective. At the end of the day, there's going to be days that you're going to want to quit. There's going to be days that you don't want to quit. There's going to be days where you don't want to have to deal or see another fucking person ever. But after that feeling goes, and after you kind of hit that reset button, you start to realize, like, holy shit, man. Days like that come less and less, and the good days come more and more. Right? So I enjoy, or I applaud the fact that you said I just want to quit sometimes. But I want to quit too not on a regular basis, but I just feel like that's something that needs to be talked about more. Just like with anything in life, luck is the hugest thing that you can really have on your side. It doesn't matter about the work ethic, the grinding, you know, who you know, what you do. A lot of it has to deal with right place, right time, luck. And not a lot of people talk about that. Not a lot of people talk about how lucky they were to talk to this person that completely, without that Ed and Eddie podcast, I don't hit 1,000 subscribers. I don't hit 2,000. I don't hit 2,500. I don't hit 3. I don't hit 4. Right? I'm just going to be completely honest. Without that one, at least yet, not that quickly. 10 months is all I've been doing this. A year, technically, if you count when my first episode started, or when I recorded my first episode. So 10 months. In the last 4 months, I've just exploded by all these people checking me out now. And like I said, I look at pressure differently. Pressure doesn't get to me. It's not that. It's how I look at myself. Right? We are our own biggest critic. We are our own biggest enemy. There's nothing anybody out there can say to me that I have not said to myself already, and a lot worse. Like I said, you know yourself a lot differently than anybody else will know you. So you can break yourself down harder and faster than anybody else can break you down. Just remember that. No matter what somebody says on the internet, in a message, in a phone call, in a text, in a comment, in a thread, what the fuck ever. Fuck them. Don't listen to them. Listen to you. Just remember, people want to quit, even if they're having fun. People want to quit at the height of whatever it is they're doing. It's just important to keep going. Because at the end of the day, nothing easy is worth having. If you have to struggle, if you have to work for it, that's when meaning comes into something. For me specifically. I don't mean to get philosophical here, Ricky, but I mean, it's just like, I want people to know that no matter how much fun you're having with something, you're going to have a hard day. You're going to have a bad day. You're going to want to quit. You're going to want to give up. You're going to want to put your head in the sand. But don't let that one feeling dictate your entire life, is what I was getting at.
No, I understand that completely. It's great to be able to speak with someone who can relate on that level.
Yeah.
You know, because like even with my podcast, like, you know, I got folks who tell me like, oh my God, you're doing great or whatnot. And it's like, yeah, you guys say that, but you know, you guys don't truly get what it's like to try to build something like this, you know, and again, being able to speak with you, man, it's just, it makes this experience a lot more I guess you could say, easier, and it's great to be able to speak with someone who can really relate to what we're doing or what we're trying to do when it comes to building the podcast or our community or speaking with people. It's, again, I cannot thank you enough, Julian, man. I love how authentic you are, man. Like, just speaking straight out what's on the top of your head, man. And it's, we did kind of go over a little bit, but it's completely cool. But before we do wrap things up, man, I cannot thank you enough for doing this collaboration with me again, man. I look to many more collaborations with you and catching up with you and seeing how far we go and grow together as well. But before I do sign off, can you let fans know where they can reach out to you if they want to contact you or even collaborate with you as well?
Sure. Take this with a grain of salt. I'm posting and ghosting essentially. So I will dip my toes back into comments here and there. I'm trying to distance myself because if I've learned anything in life, it's very hard to find time for yourself. So when you're getting pulled in so many different directions, just be aware of that. You can find me on all social media platforms at In My Head Pod. You can find us on YouTube only because I'm extremely lazy when it comes to putting audio podcasts and all that shit out there. So right now we're just on YouTube. I'm trying to get it set up for everything else for our fans that just want to listen to the audio. And that's or you can just go on YouTube and type in What's in My Head Podcast. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it, man. And if you like what we're doing here, check us out. And before we go, Ricky, man, I'm really enjoying, especially your last couple episodes. I really feel like you're starting to open up and come out of your shell. I've really enjoyed, especially the Teen Gohan and Young Goku. Just listen to Lucy. I think I'm 10 or 15 minutes into the new one that you just released. Was it Mark? Not Mark Whitten. Was it Mark Whitten?
Yeah, Mark Whitten.
Yeah. So I'm listening to that one now. And like I said, man, I enjoy being able to chat with you, man. It's been a lot of fun. I can't wait till I'm either where you're at or you're where I'm at, and we can actually, hook up and go out to eat some food and shoot the shit in person, man. So yeah, thank you for having me on, man. This has been a blast. I apologize for any of the fans who made it this far and had to listen to me ramble about some shit. But like I said, I just feel like all that shit, take it for what it's worth. Listen, don't listen. But just know that there's some real shit in these podcasts. You just got to dig through, all the other stuff and really pay attention to what people are talking about.
And that's a great way to end this episode. And again, I cannot thank you enough for this collaboration, man. And again, when we do collab again, I cannot wait, man. Like there's just so much we can talk about. I feel like, what we do with these split episodes, man, we're just barely scratching the surface, and I feel like the more I have you on, I get more comfortable as well to talk, and we could just talk about whatever and anything, man. And it's amazing to see, again, as a fellow creator as well, to see your growth in your podcast, man. And there's nothing more that I enjoy seeing people that I work with or collaborate with or even know grow their content, man, because it only pushes me to work harder at my craft as well.
Beautiful. Go plus ultra, Ricky. That's what I want to see.
Thank you. And same to you as well. So again, folks, this is episode 98, part 2 of our second collaboration. Again, you can find the first part on Julian's podcast, What's in My Head podcast. And then if you want to go back to watch our first collaboration, you can find that on my podcast as well, Spoiler First Podcast, and on What's in My Head podcast. And you just got to look up titles. And that way it's not crisscrossed or confusing. But not just that, check out Julian's content, man. Cannot say it enough. He has amazing guests on his podcast. And so definitely support him as well. And again, like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed this episode. And you can find this on all podcasting platforms, all audio and whatnot. But yeah, man, I'm taking a lot more time than I should. So again, thank you guys for listening and have a great day. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow, like, share, subscribe, and rate Spoiler Force Podcast. If you have any guest recommendations, comments, questions, concerns, or criticism, you can email me at rickyvang92@gmail.com or message me online on any of my social media platforms.